It's 10 minutes late. Sorry about that. Alright. It is Friday, July 31st. Let's see, do we have sound? Friday, July 31st. Yes, good. Welcome. Let's see. Did all this. We're going to work on specification pattern. We got music. We got chatty going. We got a few people here. Tony, Shady Nagy, welcome. Thanks for all your help this week, Shady. Yeah, I think we're good. What do you guys think about setting chat to followers only? I haven't played with that before, but I saw another streamer, another live coder was using it, and it seemed like it was really driving up his follower count because people would show up, and if they wanted to type anything, they had to be a follower. But I haven't used it before. I don't know if it would matter. I read some people saying that they really didn't like it, and that if they found some streamer that was using it, they would like leave in a huff. But I don't know. I might play with it. I haven't had any problems with people just coming in and being jerks, or bots, or anybody spamming chat, so I don't think it solves the problem so much as maybe just incentivizes people to become followers. This doesn't really look the way it's supposed to at widescreen, does it? These are supposed to be a single list. Might have to play with that. That's how they're supposed to look. Alright, so we don't need that. And what we're working on is this, which Viceni has been helping me with. So here's a link to what I'm going to be playing with. And I've already got it loaded in Visual Studio, so let's just go there. I'm going to try and keep stuff off my screen over here, just so that the chat doesn't like get in the way of anything important there. So remind me if I screw that up. Alright. Let's look at the code for this too. That's not going to do it. Let's go here. Hey Kabazi, how are you? Alright, so in here, in specification, we have Ardalis specification EF, which is a separate thing. Is that what we've done here? I wonder if the easiest thing for me to see what all changes there are is to start a pull request. So if we do this and we say, or compare, it does the same thing. Let's see, what did we change? Make this bigger. So the ultimate goal of this is to break this up a little bit, to rename a few things, and to make it so that entity framework bits are separate from the not framework specific bits. So let's just see what all is in here. So we're having the version of specification from 3 to 4. Changing some APIs, that's fine. Okay, adding a builder. Ordered specification builder. The builder has then by and then by descending. So we're changing up the syntax for how that works. Probably want to break these into different files. Maybe not. They're both specification builder, so that's fine. I think before the syntax for filtering said filter, and now it's going to say where. So basically we're going to use the same names that developers are used to from Link, which I think is good. So he's done all the work to to make that happen. This is all still in specification. Order by, then by descending. Specification Builder. Why is this new? We had this before. Okay, so this thing is going to let you do the includes, the order bys, the paginate. You can use caching. Alright, and then optionally you can use this iRepository base, which I don't think we had ever specified this before. But as long as it's optional, I think it's okay. I don't want to force people to have to use our repository implementation in this, so I'll have to look into that. Alright, then this I specification is being modified. We'll only provide a getter on the selector, alright. And we'll change criterias to where expressions. That makes sense. Include aggregators. Okay. We're adding the caching stuff. Alright. Specification Evaluator. Takes in a specification, returns back an queryable. This is what gets called by your repository. An enum for order by. I'm not sure why we need that, but we'll look at it. Alright, here's our base type. Specification of T, comma T result inherits from specification of T and a new interface. Alright. Evaluator. Rename the logo. Alright, where's the EF stuff? We added some comments. Let's see, we're going to remove the EF stuff from here, so it's going to go in a separate repo, or a separate part of the repo anyway. Okay, we renamed these from what to what. Ardalis specification integration tests is now Ardalis specification tests. Okay, I see. It was test slash, and now it's specification test slash. And that's because the EF one is in here too. I wonder if the EF one should be a separate repo. Alright, so then this EF repository got moved. This is just files moving. Sorry, this is boring. I haven't had a chance to really look at what all this is doing. Alright, so this is just a rename. We're going to run all these tests in a minute. Alright, these are all unit tests. Here's the new project, way down here at the bottom. Alright, so we got a new Ardalis specification EF. And this is going to have just the entity framework specific stuff pulled out of here. So it's an EF plugin package for specification, and it has an abstract repository you can use. Alright, here's that repository base. The implements iRepository base. Still not sure about that, but I think it's handy because it actually shows you how to use the specification. So we'll go with it. This Specification Evaluator needs EF core to do its thing. Not sure why. I don't see it jumping out at me what EF specific thing it's doing here. But it must be something. I'll look at it in the code. We got a different icon. It's probably the same icon. And then we got some tests, integration tests. The nice thing about this is we won't have to run the container-based integration tests for the main specification package anymore. I don't think. So this Docker Compose thing, which used to have to run for the whole application, now it can just work with database EF and only be used for the EF stuff, maybe. No, he still has the other one there too, though, so we'll have to see. Then we delete a bunch of stuff we're not using. Alright. This is development. Maybe you're talking about me having to review this. Good afternoon, John Calloway. Alright, so I've got Ardalis specification open. Ardalis specification EF has another CS proj file in there. Is that in here already? There it is. Alright, so we've got these organized as folders now. Okay. Azure Pipelines I'm not using anymore. That could go away. Because I'm using GitHub Actions. Yeah, no, I figured that's what you were referring to, TBD Gamer. I mean, live streaming of someone reading is probably not the most exciting thing, but I mean, it is necessary to understand what's going on. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is run tests. Let's see what happens. I expect integration tests to fail because I don't have a database running. But unit tests should pass. So let's see how this goes. And not only do they fail, they probably fail slowly because they probably wait for SQL Server to time out. Yeah, SQL Server timeout exception. You're not there. But 15 unit tests all went real fast, so that's something. All right, so then the trick is to get the test to actually pass. So let's go to File Explorer. Let's actually open that File Explorer. Let's open up PowerShell. And I have instructions on the README file for this. So here's that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Close others. Here we go. Alright, so here's my specification. Here's how you would use it. Here's a bunch of references. How do I run the tests? That should be in here. Thought that was in here. Alright, maybe not. I have a run test script. That's probably close enough. Let's get the README file in here where I can work on it. So we're going to add new solution folder. Call it solution items. Let's put that at the top. Maybe. Huh. I was always going to alphabetize them. Maybe. Oh, I could stick that at the top. Let's do that. Bam. Alright. We'll add our README file here. And that way I can easily muck with it. There. Now, sample usage is great. Reference is great. But what about run the tests? Run test.bat or run test.sh. Alright, now let's see if that actually works. So come over here. And we're in the right place. Run test.bat, let's see if that works. Alright, it's going to do Docker compose build. There's a Docker compose file in there as well. It's running. Probably too fast to really see, but it's spinning up SQL Server. You can see all the SQL Server output there. That's not any code I had to write. That's just, grab the Docker image for SQL Server and then tell it to run. Now here where it says test_1 over here on the left, that's my code. And so that's running the tests. And it was running unit tests, and it's running integration tests, it's collecting code coverage. And then it's going to run the EF tests, which they just ran, and they just completed. So that was pretty cool. They actually all worked. And it's done. So if we look here, these are the EF integration tests, and they don't have the highest method code coverage, but they all passed. They produce this out file, this TRX file, so if we want to see what those look like in Visual Studio, we can open that file and see the test result file. But otherwise, we're limited to seeing the output here in the console. I don't know of a way to run these tests in Visual Studio in Docker, so that's why we have to resort to using PowerShell. Okay, so those work. There's microservices talk yesterday. Kelsey was saying how he doesn't have Docker installed on his machine. Having only recently started to use Docker to appreciate it, I'm not sure how I would work on multiple systems without it now. Yeah, Docker's nice. It does have a learning curve, and I'm by no means an expert at it at this point, but I know enough to be dangerous, and the ability to get stuff working in Docker once and then know it's going to work most of the time, like 99% of the time, anywhere that Docker works is really handy. It gets rid of a lot of it works on my machine stuff. So let's see if that's in here. Yeah, here's the Docker compose. So this database is what's used by my integration tests. And then I don't know why we have two of them. Like we could have used the same one for both, I think. But that's fine. So we added another one for EF to use. And so this container, this test container, actually is going to use the Dockerfile in my tests project. And it's only doing await hosts on database, not database EF. That seems like it worked. Do we have separate? How did it run both sets of tests? Dockerfile, let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it ran. Alright, so here's my Docker file that I'm going to run. So let's go look at this again. This basically is saying spin up 3 machines. Alright, and so the 3 machines are tests, database, and database EF. And so test is where all my code runs. And so I'm going to build this thing using its Dockerfile, which I'm about to show you. It's got this wait hosts thing as an environment variable. That's going to get passed in, and you'll see what that's used for in a minute. And then it's going to mount this test results to this folder. So inside Docker, it's going to be /var temp. Outside Docker, it's going to be test results. And so when I look at the File Explorer here and we see test results that were just created just now, these are here because they were mapped by this volumes thing. And then this depends on these other two. So that tells, when you say Docker compose, this dependency thing is sort of like a makefile where it creates this dependency tree. And it says build the things I'm dependent on before you run me. So it's going to run database, and it's going to run database EF before it runs tests. All right, but not long before, right? They're going to launch, but it's not going to wait around before it runs tests, unless you use some extra tooling, which is what this does. So if we look at Dockerfile now, here's what my container does. My container says start with a .NET Core SDK 3.1 image. So give me an image that has .NET Core SDK on it. Here's my working folder, just the root of this thing. Now copy everything from here to there. So whatever folder this is running in, it's going to copy all the stuff. So now all my source code is in that container that has the SDK in it. And then we're going to add this wait command in the /wait folder. And we're going to run this bash command, and we're going to do all these things. So I think this is what I used to have. I think he must have changed it to this. This looks new. Or maybe this is something I added. I'm not sure. But in any case, the chmod +x/wait is going to make it so that we can execute. We have execute permissions on this wait command. And we're going to use that wait command in a second. Then we're going to install report generator. That's that thing that's giving me that code coverage. And then this command does everything. And so everywhere you see this ampersand, that says do the next thing. So it's do this, then do this, then do this. So the first thing it says is wait. And then once that's completed, then it'll do this .NET test command. And this .NET test command is for the root. Yeah. So this .NET test runs all the things because it's in the root. All right. And then after that it says and then after that move, and it's going to take and move all of the code coverage files. So the unit test folder here generates code coverage, and they all have the same name. So coverage.covertura.xml. So when I tell it to move it, I say move it, and by the way, give it a unique name. So call it .unit, and then take integration tests and call it .integration, and then take my specification EF integration tests and call it EF.integration. And then once they've all been copied, take that report generator tool and run this report thing and generate this report. Target directory is coverage. So theoretically it will have generated an HTML report in the coverage folder. So right here, we could go find this index.htm and somewhere here. So here it's generated this report now. And it says overall we have 71% line coverage and 67% branch coverage, and here's what that coverage looks like. And my Ardalis specification code is 91% covered, and this new Ardalis specification EF code is only 32% covered. So we could probably stand to write some more tests. And so you can drill down into these things and actually see what's tested and what's not. So everything that's green has been tested. Everything that's red, not so much. And that, that's how the code coverage works. So that's all the Docker stuff for this. And the reason why we're using Docker is because I don't want to have to rely on the fact that somebody that gets this thing is going to have SQL Server installed, or that they're going to have the right version of SQL Server installed, or that the connection string is going to be right. Also, I want to be able to run these tests in my CI build. So I want to be able to run all these integration tests in a Docker container, not a Docker container, in a pipeline in Azure DevOps or in Github Actions. So let's go look at that. Actions here. So we've got this ASP.NET Core CI, which isn't really ASP.NET Core, but you can see it's building version 4, that branch from a few days ago. And if we look at the details of this build, it will also run these integration tests. And you can see all these integration tests that rely on SQL Server are actually running in my build. And so you can see all this running, which I think is pretty cool. Alright, so what's left to do here? I think we've done a pretty good job. I just haven't looked at this code in a while, so I want to be careful before I just merge it all. That's there. Run tests is here. So when we do the run tests batch file, here's what it does. It does docker compose build and then up, and then when it's done, when the containers exit it, it finishes up. So that's all that is. I don't have a sample in here really. I think I should probably have a sample. I got the sample client, but I don't think in here, in version 4, here, there's no sample app that uses this. There's just the tests. Is that enough? Here's sample usage. I don't know. Maybe I'll add a sample app later. Now it is used by other things. Actually, it's used by quite a few things. That's encouraging. I didn't know there were 45 projects that use this. What else here? Bunch of stuff. A bunch of these are all forks of eShop on web. That's why. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm using this on eShop on web. The real one? Where's the real one? I don't think the real one even shows up here for some reason. But if I go there, and then this is a fork. It should be a fork. Interesting that it doesn't seem to be a fork. Alright, I won't go there. Alright, what is left to do before we actually publish this thing? And does my action work? What does publish to Nuget do? 2 months ago we last published this. That was deprecated. If we go back here and we look at the workflow here and we see what publish does, it says it's going to watch master. So when I merge into master, it's going to run this. And to list it on Nuget, it's going to install .NET and then publish this thing. And the version regex, it's going to do that one. I need this to do 2 of them, right? Or do I need 2 different targets? So this path is going everywhere. I should probably have 2 publishes, right? One for specification and one for specification EF, which probably needs to be named Entity Framework. Let's go look at that. Alright, specification EF. There's not a whole lot to this. It's got the repository base that uses a DB context. Whatever DB context you pass in. It's got the evaluator, which is pretty simple. There's not a whole lot. There's really not a whole lot to it. It's two files. Get rid of that. There, I've contributed something to this. Do the same thing here. Get rid of the usings. Alright, let's just look at the settings for Nuget. So I think this should say Entity Framework. I think that's what most people use, is writing it out. In fact, it's probably Entity Framework Core. Let's go to nuget.org and look real quick. So if we go to nuget.org and we search for EF, we get EF6, we get EF tooling, a lot of EF6, a little bit EF core. Entity framework comes up, that's nice, because it's got EF6 in the name. Alright, but their official name is Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. So if we say Entity Framework Core, we got all this. I think that's probably the right name. What does this thing depend on? That'll be right here, Entity Framework Core. So, yeah, I think this should be Entity Framework Core. So EF becomes Entity Framework Core, title, Entity Framework Core, package URL is that's still right. EF core, plugin containing EF core evaluator and abstract repository, EF core, same thing. I really don't know the difference between summary and description. Unicus 40K versus 3K. You talking about downloads of something? Package tags. This could probably stand to have EF, EF core, Entity framework, Entity framework core. There we go. Package release notes. That's fine. Assembly name should probably match. EF core. Icons, the same icon. Alright, I think that's fine. Build that. And let's do our commit. So, all that. There we go. Let's push that up. Results. Oh, I didn't look at the results on the searches. Thank you. So 40K versus 3K. 3K for the Entity Framework Core. So 41K. More. Alright. Definitely more popular. Okay, this looks good. We pushed that up. That's going to kick off the build. But not the publish because I haven't merged in yet. Alright, now what do I want to do about this? I feel like I want to name this publish specification to Nuget and then a separate one, and just copy it, do a separate one to do the other guy. And the path here has to be source / whatever to be the correct one. So here, source has nothing in it anymore, so that's not going to work. So it has to be Ardalis specification source right off the root. The solution file is still in the root. It's just strange. But I'm only going to do off of CSproj here, so that's alright. Alright, so if I go modify this in here, nothing's been changed with it yet, but this needs to be updated, so we'll edit it. We'll call it publish Ardalis.specification to Nuget, and this is Ardalis specification source star that it'll pick up. And this is project file path there, relative to repository root, yada yada yada. That should all work. Okay. Look good? Anybody see anything wrong with that? I think that's all set. So let's commit that. Alright, now the trick is that the EF one currently I think has a project reference, and it should really have a NuGet reference. So I need to publish this version 4 first, then I need to update EF to work on it. Now this should work now once I do a pull request. So pull request this, not that, compare that, version 4, just to triple check. If we come back here and we look at this guy, it should be version 4. It is. Alright. Version 4, it's a good enough name. And we just code reviewed the heck out of it. Okay, that looks fine. So let's do it. Alright, so version 4 can be deleted. Sure, why not? Now let's come back here. While the build is doing its thing, let's go switch over to master and pull. That seems to have worked. Alright, let's go watch the build then. So we come back to specification. We're now on there 44 seconds ago. We're on master. Let's look at our actions. Version 4. That's building. That's building. That's good. This publish step seems to have already happened. That's weird. I probably ought to put a build and a test into that thing, shouldn't I? Because what if all my tests fail now? I've already published it. Oops. Let's see. I need to sign in. Okay. We are signed in. If I search for Ardalis, we should see specification in here somewhere. There it is. And there it is. Published a minute ago. Validating. Okay. So that's cool. So now my next step is to specify the 4.0 specification here from EF. Right, because this thing currently has a project reference right there. So we don't want that project reference. We want a package reference. And we want it to be 4.0. And then we want to publish this thing. So we'll build that. 2 failed. Couldn't find all the things because the .NET Restore failed, right? Unable to find that with that version. And we have to wait for this to go to listed. And there it is. So let's try that again. Come on. Not available in this source. It is so. Right there. Update. Unable to find package with version 4. Let's see, we'll delete that. Save it. Close this down. Try it again. Manage NuGet packages. Browse. Specification. There's a bunch of these. Ardalis specification says it's version 4. install. What are you doing? I think it's not quite totally listed yet. Let's see, this one, maybe I also have to get rid of this. No, that one's okay. It should just pick up a transitive dependency, I would think. I don't think I have to manually add it. Okay, that worked. I feel like this should be working. Packages. It's not there. I got rid of that. Oh, that's the test. Oh yeah, that shouldn't be there. You don't have a project reference to that. Specification. That's a package reference. That's weird. You changed EF to entity and item group. Okay. Yes, thank you. Where? This is the item group. I didn't change it on this one. And I didn't change the project file name or path. Alright, that project reference shouldn't have changed. Because here, or does the title matter? But I didn't change this name. Maybe I should have. Probably save me future trouble if I change it everywhere, huh? Let's just do it everywhere. Ardalis specification. No, that can stay. That one I don't need to change. Ardalis specification dot. Let's make this match. Framework core. Okay. May as well make this be the same. Alright. Now, you've got a namespace in here somewhere, don't you? No? Four succeeded. Alright, well that's handy. One failed. That's less handy. And it's still spinning. Alright, but now it's good. What does that mean? I guess that's okay. Add a project reference to that one. Okay. Post base cannot be found. but now it can. But now it can't. Alright, so in this integration test, maybe I need the Ardalis specification, because that's where repository base is, right there. It's iRepository base. EF has repository base. Ardalis specification, I guess this ought to be that. And that magically fixes it? Yeah. Okay, so I gotta go through all the different test namespaces. Let's do that becomes dot that dot. Right? I didn't change that folder, so we'll skip that one. I didn't change that. That one we need to replace. This is faster than doing it by hand, but it's still slow. There we go. Alright. It's basically everywhere except for my test script. Alright, 1 succeeded, 4 up to date. That's good. Let's see if it works from here now. It does. Alright, good. So apparently we're fully listed in Nuget.org now. While we're here, I may as well clean up some of these using statements. I don't know why .NET thinks that you're going to want system.txt on every file. It's really not that common that you use that. If I had ReSharper, it would clean these all up for me at once. It's one of the few things that I miss about ReSharper. It's a great tool, but Visual Studio has most of these things now. Just not this one. Look at all those namespaces. Why did I have all those? Alright. Getting close. I suppose technically I should have done this before taking in the first PR. Alright, now the other problem I'm going to have is that I have a single API key for Nuget, and I'm sure I configured that strictly to work with the specification package, which means it's not going to work with a new specification.entity framework core package, which means I'm going to need a new key, which is fine. Alright, so that seems to work. Let's see if we can run our tests. Now once this works and once this is published, then I'll have to update my projects that use this. Did it work? Looks like it worked. Everything's green. Alright. Let's create a branch. And what are we doing here? This is me slash configure EF core. It's probably good enough. Create. Let's grab my changes. Configure EF core project. Clean up usings. That's about all I did, right? Good enough. Push this out there. Alright, that's now out there. So now in here, if I go to that branch, I can go and modify the workflow on it. So let's go to workflows in configure EF core. And what do I want to do? I want to add a file. So I want to take this file and see it raw and copy all of it and back up. And we're going to do a new file here, add a file, create a new file, and we're going to call this publish efcore.yaml. I'm going to paste everything in. I'm going to give it a new name, like that, and this is going to be Ardalis specification EF, still master, listed on Nuget, build it, well, set up that. We're not building it, so that's a to-do item, as I probably want to do a build here. Really, as long as I don't merge PRs before the builds pass on them, I should be safe though. Okay, so then our path is Ardalis specification EF, and let's go here. Ardalis specification EF source EF that. Alright, so Ardalis specification EF whack source whack Ardalis dot specification .ef Ardalis specification .anyframework core .csproj. Does that look right? Ardalis specification anyframework core .csproj. Okay, that looks fine. Version regex, it'll get out of there. Blah blah blah. Okay, secrets, Nuget Key. That's good. We'll commit that. Public EF core. That's not what I wanted to name that thing. Is there a way to edit this? Here. Oh yeah, this. Edit the file and then publish. None of you guys told me I misspelled publish. Rename. Okay, publish EF core. That sounds good. Now, before I merge this PR in, I want to go and update my Nougat key. So, I can go out here and come up here and say manage my keys. And they do a good job of hiding these, so even on stream I can show you. But here, this Ardalis specification one only can manage Ardalis specification, and the other one doesn't even exist yet. So I'm not going to be able to tell it to do it, but I can do a glob pattern and say .star. So let's try that. Can I edit this one? Ooh, I can. So maybe I don't need a new one. So Ardalis.specification glob pattern. Ardalis.specification.star. Edit. I should really say save. Okay, so now it should work. If I didn't screw anything else up. So let's try it. pull request time. Compare pull request. Add Ardalis dot specification dot framework core for Nuget. It's already there, but okay, so here's where I would say that I shouldn't be able to just merge this without being an admin, and I should wait for this build, because it's not going to build for the publish. So let's be somewhat prudent here and actually wait this time. Yep, Simon, that's exactly it. Sums up YAML and pipeline joy. Fiddle with relative paths and crap and hope that eventually it works. Helped significantly if you have something that already works. We can watch this. That's slightly more exciting than... Alright, look at that, it already built. Now it's just doing integration tests, which it won't show me. Clicky, clicky. There they are. Alright. So it's waiting on the database. That's what that wait for does, is it waits for that port to start responding. So it doesn't actually run any of the test stuff until the SQL server image is up and running. Now I'm still not sure why we have a separate EF thing. If I'll have to talk to Fadi and see why that's there. I mean, it works, so I don't want to break anything, but it seems like we could use one database server for all the tests. How's everybody going this Friday? Spent the last 36 hours fighting an ASP.NET Core test host builder trying to get integration tests working. Yeah, I've been there. Once you get one that works, it's just copy paste everywhere. That's why I've got these things in GitHub repos, so I can go find one that works and then, just use it. It's that first one that takes all the time. The thing I've been working on the last few weeks is that Blazor admin. Hey, it worked. It's green. Sweet. So if I have time, I can show you guys that. It's all done. It's all working. It's all out there on eShop on web now. Finally. Copy pasta. Okay, so this looks like it's good, and we can merge it. And do that. We can delete that branch. That should trigger a publish. So if we go to Actions, we should see publish that one picking up and doing its thing. And this might just blow up because I haven't done it before. It should work. But it's not just updating a package, it's creating a brand new package from scratch. So it's slightly different. Meanwhile, let's get on here and get back on master before I forget. And pull. Alright, so anybody that's joining late and wondering what's going on here, this is a specification project that you can use to clean up your repositories and your data access so that you don't have like Lambda expressions running rampant through your controllers and services and everywhere else in your code. So you define individual specifications and they look like, this, and say, hey, I need to get a store and I want it to include address, or I want it to include company and country. And so instead of having to put this .include stuff as a separate method on a repository, you would just do it in this one place. And look, there's more using statements to clean up. I'll get those later. Simon, did you go with MVVM on that or just code blocks? I'm having a lot of success sharing view models between Blazor and WPF. I'm not using MVVM, is the short answer. So, just code blocks, I guess? We can look at that in a second. Let's see if our publish works. It looks like it worked. Okay, so let's go back to here and go there. And why are all these other ones showing up? I was very specific. Anyway, dot entity framework core? What that? Oh wow, your search is awful. Filter. I was searching. How about sort by what I actually searched for? How about that? Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. That's horrible. Let's just search for Ardalis. That should be reasonable. And then search for entity frame. Okay, it's not there. Must be because it's not listed. Let's go here and see my packages. Unlisted, 0. Published. Ardalis, specifications, right there. Alright, so I can sneak into it that way. So there's the path to it. And it's listed 3 minutes ago. Okay, so things can start using this. So here you go. Go check this out in the chat. Yeah, so now if I wanted to update eShop on Web to use this, for instance, and segue, we're about to go look at eShop on Web anyway, what would that look like? Alright, so here's eShop on Web. Get it out of the way of the chat. Hopefully that does. Yeah, I need to renew my license for Independent. First let's just build this thing. And we'll check its EF or its Nuget packages here in just a second. But first, let's go in here and we'll just run it with Docker because why not? Because it's cool that it works with Docker. eShop on Web. And we can say Docker compose build, which should be quick. Is eShop using endpoints? Some of it is, yeah. The new public API project is. So I still wanted to show multiple ways to do things. So there's APIs that are just using controllers, but it is using the endpoint helper type in the public API project that we'll look at in a sec. I need to put some instructions on the login page while I'm thinking about it in here, actually. Because I'm about to do that. While that's building, let's do this. Well, I guess if I do it now, it's not going to show up, but that's okay. Go here, 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 here. And this says, here's your user. Right? Password. Let's just do this, or admin@microsoft.com. That's enough. Let's do that. Alright. It's almost done. I think public API is like the last one it builds. Now the reason why this is using Docker Compose is that now it needs to have both the web project and the API project running together. Because the Blazor app is a Blazor WebAssembly app, it's going to run in a browser as a single page application. It needs to communicate back to the web application somehow. And it doesn't communicate directly to the web app because its APIs are actually on the public API project, so it's running on a different port. So after we've built, we say up to run it, and you'll see them all run. And you'll see the output from each of them individually. The actual ports that it's running on, easiest way to find those is in this config file right here. And hey, somebody managed to trigger my bot that I just set up last week. Hey, I'm a hacker. Alright, so here's my web 5106, and API base is 5200. So let's go here and create localhost. And actually, I need a guest browser. This thing always has issues when I don't do it in a guest browser. So there's a guest browser, localhost 5106, like that. And there it is. And we can log in. And because I added that after I was in the middle of doing that Docker Compose build, that bit that I just added isn't there yet. But we can log in as this demo user here and pass @word1. We'll log in. Now we're logged in. We can see our orders and all this stuff. You can add things to your basket and update that and check out. And here's what's in my basket to review, and then I can pay, which doesn't really pay, and thanks for my order, and then I can go view my orders, and there's my stuff. I can view the details, right? So that's what the app does. And we can log out, and we can log back in now as admin. Admin at Microsoft.com. I wonder if somebody actually has that email address. Paste this in. It's the same password. Log in. Now you're an admin, but look, now you have this admin menu. And let's turn on browser tools real quick, because we want to see cool stuff. This is not related to specification anymore, although the project does use it. But here we're using Blazor WebAssembly. And so the first time we load it, you can see here, we downloaded all these DLLs. Because we're actually running .NET in the browser using the magic of WebAssembly. And if we look at the console, it'll tell us how big that was. Maybe. I don't see it. But usually it'll say, hey, we just downloaded 5 megabytes of content. If I hit refresh, it'll probably tell me that. No? I must have turned off the logging at that level. Anyway, it is telling us that it fetched the user details from the web API, and it fetched the catalog items and types and brands from local storage or API, whichever. So if we look at the network and we filter this down to server requests, and we clear that, and we hit refresh one more time, you can see it made a call to get the user details, and we'll look at that in a second, and a call to catalog brands, which just gives you back the brands like here, like other, .NET, etc. So that's a lookup table essentially that has Azure, .NET, Visual Studio, etc. We don't want to have that get called every time, so we actually cache that. So if we look in the application and we look at local storage, you'll see the brands and the types are cached. The types are things like memory stick, sheet, t-shirt, mug, etc. And then the items themselves are cached also, one page of them anyway. So there's all the products. Now then in here you can go, if we go back to console, you'll see that the cache is not forever. So if I hit this and then say that, and then click there, and then let's edit this and modify that, save that. Alright, you're going to see in the console that right here it says cache expired, removing types from local storage, and then immediately after that fetching types from API just to show this stuff. So it's got a caching mechanism implemented that has a timeout, just like data caching in ASP.NET Core does. But there's nothing built into Blazor that supports that, so I had to build that. So the services that do that, you've got like a catalog items service. That's the big one. Let's do a simple one. You got a catalog brand service, and all it does is take in an HTTP client. Does it even need this base URL configuration anymore? I don't think it does. API URL. I guess it's still using that. I could probably get rid of that. I think there's a way to get rid of that. But anyway, all it does is it goes and it hits this catalog endpoint to get the list of catalog brands. And we can hit that ourselves I think it's at 5200 here. No? Where was it? It was 5200. Slash swagger? That's what it needs. There. Alright, I just have to set that to be the default. Yeah, and so in here, getting like the list of brands would be this endpoint. This endpoint does not have any security requirements, so you can try it out. Anybody can hit this publicly, and you get this list of brands. Alright? But, if you want to add a catalog item, or delete one, let's say I want to delete a catalog item, let's try that out. Let's delete catalog number 1, execute. It says, no, you are unauthorized. Alright, so we also need token-based authentication. And so that's all done in here too. Let's stick to the caching conversation for a minute. In catalog brand service, you see there's nothing here that has to do with caching. Right? It's very simple and straightforward. It just goes and fetches the data using an HTTP client. The caching happens in this decorator. So this decorator is also an iCatalog brand service. So it's the same type as the catalog brand service. And it takes in a catalog brand service as a dependency. So it's a wrapper, basically. And so in here, this list method does all the cache logic, right? And this one spot right here actually fetches the thing from the actual catalog brand service. So up here, it just says, hey, go get the thing from local storage. And then if it's too old, then we're going to remove it. And so right here it says, hey, remove that from local storage. And then down here it actually stores it again. Right? And this cache entry thing, all that does is add in the time when the thing was set. Now, this isn't a perfect implementation of a cache because if you're not asking it for the thing, it never actually cleans it up. So you might have an old thing that sits in there forever because no one ever asks for it, and so your local storage would be holding onto it. But your local storage gets cleaned up when you close your browser anyway, so it's not that big a deal. Security-wise, inside of here, you'll notice that I'm not storing that JOT token anywhere that I need. So to do a delete call, I need to pass this thing a token so it will work. If we go back in here to this code and we say, hey, delete this thing, are you sure? Yes, delete it. Right? It actually works. If we look at the network, the reason why that works, why isn't it there? Let's delete another one. Delete. Oh wait, there it is. Hang on. That one. There, status deleted, headers. The reason why that works is because this bearer token right there. Now this bearer token we can look at. We can rip this thing off of here and we can go to a tool like jot.io and say, what does this thing look like? And it has some really basic information about who we are. Right? We are admin at Microsoft.com and we happen to be in the administrator's role, which is important because that's the role you need to be in to delete these items. Let me stop for a second. LeanWit asked a little bit ago, I'm implementing the filter pattern in a NetCore project where I have the criteria, order, skip, and offset. Do you recommend me implement the criteria object using specification? I saw some examples doing dynamic link in the where statement. Maybe? I don't know. That's not enough information for me to go on. If you want to be able to reuse them, specification pattern is nice because you can easily reuse those patterns, those lambda expressions, by putting them into a specification class, giving that class a name, and then anywhere you need to use that query, that filter, you can use that specification with that name. And so it promotes good code reuse that way, assuming that it is code that you want to reuse. If it's a one-off thing that you're not going to use anywhere else, then it's got questionable value at that point. Okay, so where did we get this token? Right, that's the question. Normally, if you're going to use JOT tokens, you got to have some kind of token service, like an identity server, or something like Auth0 or Azure AD services that you can go and authenticate with. Now in our flow, what we do is we actually log in on localhost 5106 to the web app, and we come in and we say, hey, we are admin at Microsoft.com, and then here's our super secret password, and we log in. And if we look at our application cookies on this app for 5106 cookies here, you'll see that we have an identity cookie, and that's what says who we are. If I delete that and hit refresh, then it won't know who I am anymore. But that cookie doesn't help me when it comes to the APIs. For one thing, it's not on the right site, because my APIs are now on a different application. And for another thing, we don't want to use cookies to authenticate with APIs. We want to use tokens. So the trick is that I've got to get a way to get that token into my Blazor app, into this app, so that it can do its work. And the way we do that is we have the Blazor app call back to the web app and get the user details over an API call. So these calls here to user are important because they're verifying that we are authenticated, because it's going to pass that cookie when it does it. So it says is authenticated is true, and it gets the token. Right, so this token is the token that we need to do the work. It's not stored anywhere. It's not in a cookie itself. It's not in local storage where somebody could get it through a cross-site scripting attack. So it should be fairly secure in this mechanism of how we get it. So what do we do with it in our code if we're not storing it anywhere persistently? Well, inside of a Blazor WebAssembly app, you get all these services when you start up, just like an ASP.NET Core app. The difference is that this app is for one person. This is running in one browser tab for one user. And so these things here, if you set them up as scoped, or singleton, either way, it's going to give you one of these things, and this is really the one I want to look at, this HTTP client. It's going to give you one of these things for the lifetime of that application, until you restart the browser, or until you open it up in a new tab, or something like that. Okay, so in here we create this HTTP client, we give it a base URL, and then we launch the app, and the first thing we do is we hit main layout, and main layout does, on its first render, it checks your authentication state. So it hits this auth state provider. We have implemented a custom auth state provider. It does a bunch of stuff in here. Mainly it makes this call right here and says, hey, go get the user. So that's the call that we just saw in the browser tab that's making a HTTP call to the website to get that user details. And once that succeeds, then it will take that token off the user and it will add it to the HTTP client. So this isn't something that you typically do in ASP.NET Core apps or .NET Core apps in general with a service that you just got injected. It's like, where did this HTTP client come from? Well, it was just injected here by the framework. Now I'm going to modify it. I'm going to change its state. I'm going to set this property on it. That's changing the state of the live instance of the HTTP client that's going to be used everywhere for the life of this app. So anywhere else that asks for this thing, like say catalog item service, it asks for an HTTP service, it's going to get the same one. And so it's going to retain that property, which is that authorization header for that bearer token. And so in here now, when I make calls with HTTP service, because this call happens after that call to the layout, it's going to have the token at that point. And so it'll be a secured request. Yeah. And the other last thing that's a little bit interesting here is when you fetch these items, by default, the type of item that you get back just has IDs for brand and type, I believe. We can verify that. We can go here, look at catalog item endpoint here, catalog item DTO, and right here it gives you back catalog type ID, catalog brand ID. Okay, but in our code, we don't want to display the IDs. We want to display the actual names of those things, right? T-shirt or other or whatever. And so you've got this classic problem with lookup tables. Now you can either do a join here inside your API and return back either an actual catalog type DTO here with an ID and a name, because you do want the ID also, right? Or have this be two properties, int and string. And so you can do it at the API level and return back more data in a denormalized fashion. But if you have a lot of columns, or a lot of records, that can significantly increase the size and complexity of the object that you're returning. Whereas right now this is very simple, right? I like to keep it that way. Now if you get the brands just gives you a list of IDs and names. And if you get the types, it's the same, right? You just get these IDs and names. So you've got the data, but you got to stitch it together somewhere in the client. And what you could do is you could come into your list page here. Where's our pages? Come into our catalog item page list. And this is what we started with, honestly, is here for these two rows. These are those cells in the table where it's displaying the type name and the brand name. If all you have is the ID, you could do a lookup right there. And you could say, hey, given this ID, go find me that name. And you could store it in a dictionary, or you could do some link expression to loop over it. You could be really dumb and actually do a web API call right there and go out and see like, hey, HTTP client, go get me by ID this type and give me its name. And then do the same thing for brand, right? And then you run this thing in a for each loop with 50 items, and you make 100 calls to the web endpoints to get those things, right? Don't do that. Instead, here these are just strings, and so the page that we're using here, which is in Blazor Shared, models, catalog item, right? We have catalog type ID and catalog type, which is just the name. Same thing for catalog brand. We start those off to say not set because we don't get them back from the API directly. We set them ourselves. And we do that here in this service where after we've got the brands and the types, we go through and we set them right there. And we say, catalog brand equals brands first or default, whatever, dot name, catalog type, same thing. And then we return this. Now, this also is a little bit like sketchy, especially if these lookup tables were large, right? I've got 5 brands and 5 types, so getting a list of these inside of another data access method, it's essentially what this is, right? It's a web API data access method, but it's still a data access method. So inside of here, I'm going to call 2 other data access methods to get 2 lists of things, in addition to the one I need to get for the base item. And then after I get those results, I'm going to stitch them all together, populate the thing I need, and return it. The reason why this is not awful is twofold. First, if you put async in front of await in front of each of these, and you say await on this, await on this, await on this, then this will happen serially, sequentially. And if it takes, half a second to get this request, and half a second to get this request, and half a second to take this request, congratulations, it just took you a second and a half to get to, down here where you're going to do your work. This task.whenAll thing, though, is nice, because it says, start this operation, start this operation, start this operation. Okay, now, await here for all of them to be done. And you can only do that when they don't depend on one another, but in this case, they don't. So once they're all done, then grab me their results, and then do the work, right? And now I can return it. Okay. Now, why is this not horrible? Part 2. The other reason why it's not horrible, in my opinion, is that these are cached. So when I say, give me brand service up here, I'm asking for an iCatalog brand service and an iCatalog type service. What am I going to get? Well, if we go to this configuration here where we set those up, iCatalog brand service is a cache decorator, and so is type. It's a cache type decorator. So what that means is that inside that service where I'm fetching those things, most of the time, I'm just fetching them from local storage. I'm not actually making a call anyway. So it should be fairly efficient. All right, so this is all out there now. If any of you want to check it out, go ahead and clone it. The ebook itself is going to have a little more content in it. So this is on eShop on web, and it looks like this. This book is in the process of being updated, and it will have the Blazor client stuff in it. It's not going to go into heavy detail, because it's more of a book about practices and architecture, not low-level detail. But I'm sure I'll talk about the caching, and I'll talk about the JOT token, how that was passed around, because that stuff's interesting. And then also the reason why we have a separate public API project. I should talk about that real quick with you all. One of the reasons is generally it's just a good idea to split these things up, right? Public API, the clients for this public API are very different than the clients for this web project, right? The web project's clients are users with browsers, and the clients for public API are programs, right? They're not users. So, I mean, their users are running the programs, but the actual thing calling the APIs is programs. And so that has impacts on security. So we come in here and we look at the startup.cs and we look at how we do authentication here. We're using the cookie authentication scheme. And so everything in here is about setting up how this cookie works. And I already showed you the cookie that you get when you log in. Hey, thanks for the follow, Samir Ahmeds. But cookies aren't how you want to secure public APIs. Generally with public APIs you want to use tokens. So if we look at startup.cs here, and we look at its add authentication right there, it's going to say use JOT-bearer defaults. And then it's going to configure the JOT-bearer tokens. So very different. You can combine them, but it's really nasty doing it, in my experience. I spent several hours, many hours, trying to get these things to work together, because I really didn't want to have two projects, right? I kind of wanted to just have web, which already has like some APIs in here. It's got this controller, this API folder, this order controller here is a base API controller, I think, maybe. Yeah, like this is an API right here. No, that's a view. Never mind. Something must use this base API. Oh, no it doesn't. It's no longer used. Okay, it used to have APIs. It used to. This user controller is still basically an API, right? Yeah, API controller. So it has this one, right? But this one actually does use cookie auth because of the way I want it to work. So if you want to try and combine cookie auth and JOT auth in here, you can, but what you have to do is add both of those schemes, configure both of them, and then put in some custom logic to say which endpoints should use which ones. And so you can go into your things here, and you can say authorize, and then here you can say my authentication scheme, authentication scheme equal cookies, right, or whatever, or JOT, right? This could be token. And then it will try and use the correct one. You can even combine them if you want. But it is nice to have two things because you can deploy them separately. So Simon is saying, hey, we did that for ASP.NET 4.7.2, hosting Angular 6. Makes Azure hosting simpler because you only have one web app to worry about. Gateways and message rules are simpler. Yeah. I mean, fewer projects is simpler, right? But it's also true that getting rid of conditional logic, it makes your life simpler. And so the fact that there was a lot of conditional logic involved in which authentication scheme to use for which parts of the app made this really difficult. Because what happens if you tell your MVC app here that our authentication should be JOT token? Well, authentication has a few pieces to it. One of them is like, what do you do when something's forbidden? Okay, like I tried to get to my orders, but I'm not logged in. What should happen? Well, if you're on the web, what you expect when you go someplace that you're forbidden from is it's probably going to give you a login with a return URL, so you can log in, and then boom, you show up and you're looking at your orders. Right? That's what you expect. But if you're an API, and you hit an API endpoint and you're forbidden, you don't expect a redirect to a login page. That's not how APIs work. You expect a 401 or a 403 that says, hey, you're not authenticated, you're not authorized. And what would happen is, if you didn't get this set up just right, is you would go to some endpoint in the web, like My Orders, and instead of redirecting to login, you would just get in your browser a 401. And that wasn't what you wanted at all. And so trying to get that to work consistently and appropriately for both the web side and the API side was a real hassle. And as soon as I split them, oh my god, everything got easier. So I would recommend, if you have the opportunity to keep your APIs separate from your page-based stuff, to do so. Now, if the only thing you're spitting out on your app is, Angular inside of a static file, then you're fine, right? It's only if you're using all this ASP.NET Core stuff and you have actual views and you have actual, identity and authentication and stuff, that's going to use a page-based flow, right? Like your login screens, being served by ASP.NET Core, not served by Angular, that this would be a thing where you'd want to keep them separate. And Simon says, if the SPA is the only client of the API, it's fine. As soon as it has a non-user interaction client, then use right. Yeah, and so I decided to make this a public API, just because, right? Why not? And I made some of these things require authentication and some of them not. So like you could get the list of brands and types and stuff even without being authenticated, but if you want to manage and actually change or delete items, then of course you should be authenticated. Not only that, you should be authorized. And so it shows both of those scenarios. All right, any other questions about that? The next thing I want to do is see how badly all this breaks when I start upgrading my version of specification in here. So this is using specification for stuff. And if we look at our dependencies, we should look here. We're using Ardalis specification version 3. What if we use version 4? What happens then? I expect the world to break. So this is how we get to the point of having some help for people on what they need to do to fix things. That actually worked. Well, that's amazing. I was not expecting that. So that was easy. I thought I had stuff that would break. Let's try this one. Dependencies, packages, Ardalis spec, right. So let's manage for the solution. Consolidate on 4 for everybody. So core is on 4. Infrastructure needs to get to 4. Web needs to get to 4. Alright, do it. Now we're breaking stuff. Alright. Interesting that core decides to break now, but it didn't a second ago. Alright, so here, base specification is not in there because it's only an I. Right? Let's go back to specification. That's not it. This one? There we go. Let's look at our code. Ardalis specification. Don't I have a base specification in here? Our specification here. I don't call it base anymore. It's just specification of whatever. Okay. So this should be that. Okay, that's easy enough. Right. Not contain a constructor with one, doesn't include add include. Let's see. This dot query. Virtual query. How do I pass in the expression? It's a where expression now, right? I guess I should look at the test to see what the new syntax is. Let's do that. Let's look at what a spec looks like. That's got query.include, and it's the same as add include. So I would say query.include items, right? Okay. Alright, and how do I add this base filter? Gonna be query.where, probably? Those are all includes. Maybe I have to like an integration test to see a where. Query. Yep, query.where. Okay. And you can just build it all right there. Okay. So that would be this would become query.where v.id equals basket ID instead of that. Alright, because these don't inherit from base anymore. Okay, that looks good. And then this one's buyer ID. Like that. Okay, so that's easy enough. Let's see what else. I'm going to have to fix probably all the specifications to do the same thing. But now I know what I need to do. Hey, there's only 63 errors. That'll be easy. Yeah. Alright, so there's my query.where. Take all this. Let's stick it in there. Queryable. This is just that. And this is now that. Right. And then, is there now an apply paging? Or do I use take? Paginate. Skip take. Alright. That was easy enough. Apparently I don't need link anymore. Which I don't think I had before anyway. Alright. So this one just has a query.where. And we'll take this and stick it there. And we don't need that. Right. Don't include order items. Dot then include item dot item ordered. Look at that. It actually works. Okay, this isn't bad at all. Yeah, it is looking better, isn't it, Simon? Thank Fadi for that. That was all his work. Let's see. Don't need that. Let's see what's left to build. bunch of stuff. Ardalis specification, base specification. That's not what's here. What are you telling me? EF repository doesn't have that. Okay. But I could use my base repository if I wanted to. But I don't know if it's the same. Let's see. This specification now in here. Nope. In here, specification EF has a repository base, but what are the odds that it matched my naming of async here? Add async, update async, delete, delete, save, get, list. It's actually pretty close. But this just uses a specification evaluator, which is this I specification evaluator of T, which if it's not provided, we're going to just say is a new specification evaluator of T. Okay. So I can ask for that here, and instead of EF, we can do that. This used to be a static method, I think, and now it's that, which is what? That's just this other thing here, right? This guy. So in our Ardalis specification EF core, which I have not yet included, I can new this thing up. So await new. Okay, or we could do var evaluator equal new specification evaluator of T, not base. Like that. And then we could await evaluator dot that. And what does that look like? Dot get query, pass in a queryable and a specification. There's our queryable, there's our spec. Alright, so that's not resolved because I need the Nuget package. On infrastructure, we want to manage Nuget packages. We want to search for Ardalis.specification. This search is a little nicer. There it is. We can install that. We can accept that. Okay. And then if we go back here, we just need a namespace now, hopefully. Cool. Okay. Down to 57 errors. That's web. And those are all unit tests. I don't know why my unit tests are complaining so much. What's up with this? No await on that. Okay, so it's not an async thing anymore. So what does this thing return? Just an iQueryable of T. Alright. Okay, so all these things that are waiting for that no longer have to. Specification results just an iQueryable. Okay, that should be it. Web, unit tests, Blazor admin, application core. Need to fix that. Query.where, blah blah blah, semicolon. Alright. Then you can see the real errors. Yeah. I find it easier to filter out the meta errors with the error number ending '6. That happens because something can't compile. I have not tried that. But I do know that if I can find the most dependent upon project, in this case it was core, if I can fix that one, then everything else, starts to shrink rapidly. So that's what happened in this case. This nav menu thing is a weird error. I don't know where that came from. Found markup element with unexpected name nav menu. I'm assuming if I fix web that this will go away. So let's just ignore this error. Let's work on... Alright, web is fixed. It's weird. Let's rebuild everything. Okay. There's your metadata file that you're talking about. Alright. I see what you mean. Well, let's just start looking at these unit tests. So, spec no longer has criterias. Instead it has a query, I think. Matches basket with item. So, get this thing. Just spec that query? No. How do I do this? Let's go look at spec tests, unit tests. Those are the actual specs. That's the aggregator. That's the expression. These aren't really very full-featured tests. Where's the integration tests? Select this. Let's go over here and look. So there's my query. How do I run this query in the EF repository base? When it does a filter, list async with spec, it says apply the spec. Okay, apply the spec says Specification Evaluator. Specification Evaluator inherits from base and says query.select. Alright, but how do I use the spec without the evaluator? Is that my problem? Do I need the evaluator now? I think I have to, because my base specification here has a query, but it's protected. It doesn't expose it. It has a public selector, protected query. There's a collection of where expressions, but I can't use that. So I think I need the evaluator now. So, Specification Evaluator. In my test, I would say something like result. Let's see. I've got a queryable. I want to pass the spec into that, so var evaluator equals new specification evaluator of whatever basket, maybe, and result is blah blah blah. Var result equals evaluator dot get query of, my queryable of basket is this get test basket collection there, and then the spec, which is the spec, and then that's the thing, and I just say dot first or default. Right? List of basket dot as queryable. So try that. And then I just pull the evaluator up into a field and I can use it everywhere. Niyoashi, hey, how's it going? I think I'm close to done with this. Let's see. All these specs are going to be on baskets. So one evaluator of baskets should be fine. Private read-only spec evaluator of basket. Evaluator equals new. One of those. So that goes away. And that becomes that. And we do that. And then this becomes this. And assert that there are not any is really just an assert null, right? I guess this could be a dot any. This can be an assert false on the result. Alright. Okay, and then this one matches a basket with a given ID becomes that one. We assert not null on the result. There's that. Same with this. Assert false. This is another any one. So that's the same as this. A bad buyer ID is not going to have a basket, so pass that in. Assert false result. Viceni, hey man, how's it going? We're published. V4 is out there. I'm actually wiring it up right now to eShop on web. I gotta wrap it up here in a few minutes, but I think I'm down to just the unit tests to fix. So I'm pretty close. No, I just saw on Twitter that you're working on it. Yeah. See, if you were following me, you'd get notified by Twitch. Alright, so here's a different class, so I need to bring in what I just did, wherever that was, basket with items, here. I need this evaluator. Zena Teresa. I'm using specification package, how can I reuse parts of a specification? Well, you can use inheritance for one, or you can create a spec that combines them. So you can create an aggregate spec, like an AND spec or an OR spec, that takes in two other specs and then, you know, puts them together with whichever logic you want, whether it's an AND or an OR. That's pretty simple to do. I don't have an example showing it, but it's easy for that. You don't need an evaluator for that. All right, tell me how. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Grab the expressions off. I don't want to go through the list though, do I? Because I was looking at that. It was only a list of expressions on base spec, right? So here's this enumerable of where expressions. Can I use that enumerable of expressions in a .where clause? I thought I had to give it a specific one. Honestly, I didn't try though. So result equals, let's try this. Result equals get test basket collection dot as queryable dot where spec dot what. dot expressions dot, I've already forgotten the name, dot where expressions. Does that work? I really didn't think that would work. Just grab expressions since that one was just renamed from criterias. Yeah, but before I had criteria, singular. So yeah, this doesn't like this. And I don't want to have to get the first one. So if you show me how to do this without doing the evaluator, I'll believe you. But sorry, if you're on your mobile, let's see. We got where expressions, order expressions. Let's go back to specification here. Find all references. This is where we add them. This is where we evaluate them. Specification Evaluator base, right, goes through and aggregates the where expressions. So I can do it with that if they're greater than 0. If they're, right, okay. You check on spec integration test for examples. I didn't see any that were doing what I wanted. We have 2 sets of integration tests now. Here's these. We have here. See, these are all using blogs. The integration tests are all using repositories, not just collections. Specification test file. That's using repositories. Yeah, I don't see one that's not using a repository in the integration tests. And then in the unit tests, there's Specification Evaluator get query. Yeah, I don't see anything that lets me just use a spec all by itself directly. This is all using aggregators. It's okay though, if I have to use the evaluator, it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to change it to this for now, and if there's a simplification we can always take care of that easier, or later. I could just cheat and grab the first one, that would work. Alright, I am going to have to go because I've got another call I've got to get on. So let's go see who's online. Let's go here and raid somebody. Channels I follow. Let's see, twitch.tv/team/livecoders. This is always loud. Coding Garden, who's that? They have a lot of followers. Clarkio's on, Ed's on. Let's do Ed.
Science is
I thought I was following Ed.
There is a chemical reaction that can release a...
Quiet. I don't know if I'm following him. I am following him. It says unfollow. Okay. So why doesn't he show up here in my list? He's going to be done in any second now, I'm sure, but we're going to raid Ed. And I'll finish cleaning up the eShop on web stuff and get that update published out there, but I'll talk to y'all later next week. Thanks for hanging out.